Hello, hello.
Hello.
How's everybody doing?
Mhm.
Good, I hope. I'm letting people in. I'm removing all of your note takers. Seems that everyone has a note taker these days, doesn't it? All right, so welcome to the first day of the Magnetic Messaging Challenge. I will introduce myself here in just a second as I'm letting people in, and they are hopefully coming on camera, and we will have a chance to introduce one another. You know how it is when you're hosting these things on Zoom and Facebook at the same time. I feel like like conducting some kind of bizarre technological orchestra here, trying to get all the things working. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Meredith Banka, and I am the founder of True Story Marketing Mastery. And I get to help business owners every single day tell their story. It's my absolute passion, and I'm so glad that you guys are all here today to learn how to tell your story a little bit better and to do it in a way that allows you to feel authentic and to do it in a way that allows you to feel really excited to share your story. So I'd love it if you are able to come off camera and be here and be present. That would be amazing. If that's not possible for you, totally understand. There's Debbie. Feel like I just saw her. One of my fantastic clients. So I love when clients join in on these sessions as well. And then I'm going to make sure that we are recording because I am going to make these available to you all in the next couple of days. So we are recording. I will start out by saying that although I would love for you to be here for all 3 days of the challenge, I recognize it's a holiday week. It's the beginning of the month. You might not be able to make it in for all three of the sessions. If you can, amazing. If you cannot and you registered for the challenge, then I will be providing you with the replays through a link that you can go in and watch these again at any point in time. They aren't going to be made publicly available, and they're not even going to be made available in the Facebook group. So it's one of those you have to be here or you have to have registered in order to get in. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to accomplish during the challenge, and then let's just dive right in because I want to make sure that we are really making great use of all of your time. In the 25 years that I have been helping people, and well, I've been in marketing and sales for 25 years, and for the last 12, I've been helping business owners to tell their stories in a variety of different ways. And one of the things that I hear so frequently from business owners is, well, my story's not enough. My story's not big enough. It's not tragic enough. It doesn't have enough drama. It doesn't compare well to other stories. Like I think other people's stories are better. And a really fantastic friend of mine, whose name is Frank Swoboda, told me years ago, he is a very successful movie producer and videographer. And he told me, Meredith, here's the key. You do not need to have the best story. There will always be somebody whose story has more dramatic elements in it than yours. But what you need to be able to do is tell your story best. So you need to make the best of your true story, of the thing that you have to share. And when we do that, that's where the magic happens. So I would love for you guys to drop into the comments where you're from, maybe how we know one another, and just maybe a little bit about your business, because I think it's fantastic for all of us to get to meet one another. And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get us into presentation mode, and we are going to dive in to this. So hold on just 1 second. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen. That's always a good place to start. And Canva is not being my friend today. There we go. A little bit of a lag. Can you guys see that screen okay? Yep, give me a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. And because we have a small group here today, I would love for this to be interactive. So if you're comfortable coming off of chat, or into the chat, or even unmuting yourself and asking a question, please feel free to do so. Each of these sessions is a working session. So I'm not a big fan of sessions where you come in and somebody just talks at you. I'm much more a fan of sessions where you actually get to participate and where you walk away with something of value. That's really the whole point. And so again, if you've got a question or anything along those lines, drop it in the chat. I'll check that frequently, or just raise your hand and then you can unmute and we can talk, okay? So today we're going to dive in with the first piece of the challenge, and it's all about actually learning how to tell your story in a new way. And it's about clarifying the elements of your story. And the piece that I want you to think about with this is that the shift that your ideal client is waiting for is the shift that you've already made. So let me say that again. The shift that your ideal client is waiting for is the shift that you have already made. Your best clients, you are probably 3 or 4 steps ahead of them in whatever transformational process it is that your program, product, service, or business offers. And people will be attracted to the shift that you have lived because it's aspirational for them and it shows your leadership capability and it shows what you are able to help them achieve because you yourself have done it. Does that make sense to everyone? So often in marketing, what I see happening is business owners leading with the elements, kind of the brass tacks. Oh, my program is 6 weeks long. My program's 90 days long. You get 3 Zoom sessions a week. You get these downloadable worksheets. All of those things are important in the description of your product, but somebody is not going to work with you or buy from you because you have 5 Zoom sessions versus somebody else having 3. That's not where their decision is made. Their decision is made based on the ability that you have to paint the picture for them that you're the one above anybody else that can lead them to the place that they want to be. And by showing them the steps and the elements of your story, you will be able to show them that your lived experience is exactly what it is that they're looking for. And that creates resonance because they say, oh my gosh, that's me too. It's perfect when the person actually starts identifying with you and seeing themselves as a part of your story. So I'm just going to check the Facebook group here really quickly to make sure nobody is lost in the ether. Okay, it looks like we're good. Now I'm going to check my messenger really fast just to make sure there's not anybody that's stuck. Okay, awesome. So what we're going to do is first of all just take a deep breath, right? This is fun. This isn't getting teeth pulled. We're not going to the dentist, we're not doing one of those things that we don't like to do today. More than anything, what I want you to do is just honor your own experience. Honor that you have lived through your own reinventions and that that has perfectly positioned you to be able to do the work that you're so passionate about doing. And I would argue that there's probably one chapter in your story that changed everything. There was probably one moment the light bulb went on, and it was one of those if you know moments, and you could never go back from there. Is that true for all of you? We have a special guest on our Zoom today. His name is Maverick. The cutest dog you have ever seen. Love him. So what we're going to do is actually go a little bit further though than the one big chapter. We're going to break these chapters down based on your whole life experience. But first, what I want you to do is jot these 3 things down. This session and the next 2 sessions will work really well for you the more clarity you have around these things. If you don't have a ton of clarity around these things, that it's going to be okay. But I would actually encourage you to grab 20 minutes on my calendar and let me help you figure out who your ideal client is, what the big transformation you provide for your client is, and what is stopping them from getting there on their own. Those are the 3 big questions, because these are really the backbone of any kind of marketing, any kind of messaging, any kind of introduction that you're going to make of yourself or your business. You really do need to know who your ideal client is, and you need to know what makes them tick. So just jot that down. Is it, women between 40 and 55 years old who are making more than 6 figures and looking to scale their business? That would be a great description. Maybe it's someone who, if let's say you're in health and wellness or something like that, maybe it's postpartum women who are looking to transform their health now that they're mamas, right? So you could define that a little bit. And if you want to, drop in the chat the answer to these questions, because that'll help us a little bit later if you need me to chime in and help you with the exercise. So who is your ideal client? What's the biggest transformation you provide your client? So what's the one big thing that you provide for them that no one else does, or that they are just absolutely seeking? So what is that big transformation that you provide your client? And then what is stopping them from getting there on their own? Are they confused? Are they afraid? What are the feelings? What are the emotions? What are the things that are happening from them for them that are keep them from moving forward on their own? This begets the concept of how you help them, right? Because you're going to provide the element that they can't provide for themselves. Maybe it's accountability, maybe it's clarity. Does that make sense to everyone? And everybody raise your hand if you've got the three written down. And if you want to drop them in the chat, great. Okay, cool. So let's move on to the next thing. So here's what we're going to do, and this is going to take a few minutes. We're going to review your story, your personal story by the decade. And I was finding myself laughing earlier today. I have a client who's in her 70s, and I thought, oh my gosh, if she was here today, she would say, Meredith, seriously, like by the decade, my, like that's a big story. That's awesome because that's her lived experience. So reflect on your journey, starting in your teens, then your 20s, then your 30s, 40s, 50s, however old you are, whatever, experience level you've reached, if you will. And I want you to write down, obviously, we ha all had a ton of experiences in each of the decades, right? So it's not every experience that we've had that is relevant to what we're doing in this exercise. What is relevant are the things that ultimately led you to create the work that you do, to have the purpose that you have, and to be passionate about providing that result for other people. So I'll give you an example. I have always been a storyteller, always, from like always. I can remember being a young kid, and in kindergarten, we were doing a play, and they needed somebody who could memorize this whole entire long script. I think it was Hansel and Gretel. So I had to memorize the entire script of Hansel and Gretel. It was probably 5 or 6 minutes long. And I was 6 years old, and I memorized the whole thing and stood in front of the classroom while all the kids did their little pieces of their skit. That's one of the first memories that I have of, wait a minute, I'm really good at articulating story. The second memory that I have that shaped me is my fourth grade teacher, Mr. Iacano. I didn't like him. um, he wrote on my report card that I talk too much. And in fact, that I talked more than any fourth grade child that he had ever had in his classroom, and that it was disruptive and it was all these negative things. And I just remember thinking, like, Mr. Iacano, I'm talking because I'm trying to help people. I'm talking because Michael Kincaid sits next to me and he's struggling, and I'm trying to help him with the lesson. But I got busted for talking anyway. Then in my teens, I started my first business. Okay, so I've always been an entrepreneur. So write these things down. Okay, just jot down a list. Um, and look at those and figure out in which decade did that big transformation happen. For me, the big transformation happened late in my 30s after our second child was born, and I decided to walk away from my corporate career. I had an awesome career, fantastic salary, benefits, all the things. I worked in the travel industry. I got to go some places in the world that I never thought that I would go. But the piece of it that sucked was that it was a pretty toxic work environment. And I traveled 50% of the time and on average worked an 80-hour week. And I was just done. And so that minute when I walked away was the minute that that changed everything and fully put me in a position to be able to share the gifts I have with storytelling and marketing and messaging. So as you're going through, write down in your teens, what are the big moments, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. And when you're done, just, throw up a reaction or give me a hand wave when you've got all those things jotted down. And then I'm gonna ask a couple of you to come off and each share your a couple of your experiences. Feel like I should have some like Jeopardy music in the background for the quiet part. Although it wouldn't be Jeopardy. What would it be? What would be like a good storytelling? That does make me think. When I was a kid, I've never met anybody that had these. And so I keep sharing this in the hopes that somebody else also had this. I was a kid in the late 70s, early 80s, and I had these audio cassettes, and they were called little thinker tapes. Have you guys ever heard of those? They were the coolest thing. And the little thinker tape came with a blank sketchbook. And it would be like Little Thinker goes to space, or Little Thinker goes to the farm, or Little Thinker, goes to the beach. And it would tell a little story, and then it would pause and play classical music while you then got to draw your imagery of that particular part of what the adventure that Little Thinker was taking you on. So maybe it's classical music that we need while you guys do this.
I think you need my theme song, which is I Lived by One Republic.
Oh, that would be a good one. Yeah, that would totally be a good one. Okay, so how are you guys doing? Do you have all of your decades documented? Tamara's good. Is it Tamara or Tamara? Oh, I can't hear you because you're muted. I think you can unmute yourself. You can't unmute yourself. Oh, well, how about that? We'll see if that works to ask you to unmute.
There it goes.
There you go.
Now I got it. Technically challenged. I go by Tamra.
Tamara, nice.
Mhm.
And where are you joining us from?
Spokane.
Oh, you're in Spokane also.
Yes,
Fantastic. Oh, great. We're having some killer
Mhm.
weather this week, so that's
We
awesome.
are.
Well, it's great to meet you. I don't think we've had a chance to meet yet.
It's nice to meet you too.
And how are you doing, Jennifer?
Well, it's hard for me to write and listen, so I'm listening to you, and so I'm only in my 20s.
Okay, perfect. I like that. I'm in my 20s.
So yeah, I'm only in my 20s here. So I've got some ground to cover. So
Okay, yeah,
again, yeah.
yeah, we can give you a couple minutes. That's fine. That's
You don't let me hold up the group. You just keep going. I'm one who thinks in quiet.
okay, perfect. Yeah, and that's great. That's why we're also giving you the recordings afterwards. So if you need to re-listen, or if you don't quite catch everything, um, I will say that what we're going through today, these exercises are not massive. You're not going to walk away with pages and pages and pages, but the information that you're going to walk away with is very pointed, very specific, and very directed to an end goal that I want you guys to get to. And I hope that by the end of day 3, you can really, really see how that makes a difference. So either Tamara or Debbie, Debbie's having a snack. Do you want to come? That's which is fine. Do you want to let me know, like, if you have all your decades documented, what was the big kind of turning point for you in what you do?
Mm.
What decade did that happen in for you, Debbie?
Well, it's funny, I look back and there's a couple of different places that really key pivotal things. Um, but I would say in my 40s, late 40s, I walked away from my corporate executive job and I moved to Idaho. It's when I got my master's at Gonzaga and I started my business in 2014 as a side gig. And then I would say like late 40s to that like early 50s was then when I hired my first coach and about puked because of the amount of money I was spending on myself that I had never spent before.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't looked back. And then I started teaching at Gonzaga, walked away from my W-2 job and went in full time and also got divorced after 30 years married. And not everybody has to get divorced to find out who they are, but that was a pretty big.
Yeah, that's massive. And you and I know each other pretty well.
Mhm.
Um, but I love the component of that of you making the choice to invest in yourself.
Yeah.
I think that is a huge message. And it doesn't always have to be a financial investment. It can be a time investment. It can be a nutritional investment. It can be an investment in something that, doesn't necessarily have a price tag tied to it that can be transformative. So I love that. How about you, Tamara?
I've got 2 decades, and my decades kind of all flow because of the type of work. The first one is going to be teen, and that's when I moved away for my career in dance at 14. So that's kind of a big deal, moving away and being ready to do that. Went back to Boston and New York.
I'm having a moment where I'm realizing who you are. Like I now putting a face to a name. It is so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So that was huge. And dance has been in my life throughout all the decades. So the next decade, I'm going to go into all the six, go all the way to 60s. But the next one that was the biggest one for me was the 50s. And that's also a divorce after 32 years. And then I started my own business, which was something I'd always been teaching or guiding, or my children are also dancers. So it's taken me all over the world with that. But something happened and I moved back up to Spokane, and it was time to open my own studio, my own practice with that. So that was a big decision at that age as
Yeah.
well. And starting over, prior my marriage, I had business with my ex-husband as well, not to do with dance, but I've had dance and teaching and performing throughout all of the decades. So I've really never experienced anything else except for some side different jobs in business or whatever I'd pick up. And then the biggest job, being a mom. And so I've had experience with being a professional, teaching choreography, and also children that have gone on at the same type of, obviously, well, not obvious, but same dance at the same age too. So there's been a lot of parallels with that and guidance. And then I coach people that go into the performing arts as part of my studio business as well.
That's awesome. And the thing I think that stands out in your business, because now that so Tamara owns a dance studio here in our community. And so when we think about your ideal client, it's really a bit of a blend, right?
It is.
You've got the parent,
Yes.
uh,
Hmm.
but then you've got the kiddo too. And
Yeah.
you've got them at different stages.
Right.
You've got your little ones who just want to have fun and keep their body moving and
Mhm.
be ballerinas or dancers or whatever. And then you have your older students who are on a different path, uh, who are maybe looking for career. And at that point, parents are looking for different things, right? They're
Correct.
looking for,
Hmm.
and this person help my child get where they want to go in a very, very competitive space. So, uh,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
so keep working on the decades. And what you might want to do is, because you have two audiences in a sense,
Hmm. Hmm.
you might want to kind of dual path it and say, okay, so I left at 14 to go pursue a career.
Hmm.
What does that mean to a parent versus
Hmm.
what does that mean to a kiddo?
Hmm.
Right? Um, maybe later when you started having your professional career, what does that mean to the child who wants a professional career versus what does that mean to the parent? Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
because, I think that that's a very also blended decision in the family.
Oh,
Uh,
it is. Yeah.
so yeah, so we're going to get into that a little bit here in the next couple of pieces of the exercise, but I want to highlight that for you right now. So as you're writing out your decades, you're thinking of it that way.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Jennifer, how about you?
Sure. So I would actually say, like, my story probably starts before the teens with the story of the Wizard of Oz. When I was like 4 years old, um, and I was watching the Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy throws the water on the witch. She melts, and I cry. And my mother tries to reassure me, the witch is gone. I was like, but that's the problem. Nobody ever talked to her. Nobody ever tried to understand her. She felt very misunderstood. And then, Wicked kind of vindicated and validated everything that I thought. But so I think that was the first time I think everybody kind of realized that my purpose is to support people who are marginalized, to elevate people, to understand people. So it starts with the Wizard of Oz. But as a teen, I did a lot of volunteering, and served on my first board, got a waiver to become an EMT, things like that. But also, it was very defining in the fact that I had a pseudo adopted older brother that some things happened, and I was very upset with him.
Mhm.
He came out, it was in the 80s, came out that he was gay, he had AIDS and things like that, and so we couldn't talk about a lot of that, but I felt very upset and betrayed.
Mhm.
And I was 16, so I realized that was defining, because I realized I could not have expectations for other people's lives. That was wrong for me. So that became very defining. um But the things that defined me as I went on is in my 20s, shortly after college, I quit my job, moved to Virginia, didn't know anybody, figured it out, but took a risk, and that kind of started my trajectory. I did work for the county, and much like what you said, it was toxic. It was a very toxic environment for me. And so I left and I started a nonprofit. And when I left the county job, which had a lot of security, my daughter had just turned 2 that week, and I had an under 1 year old son.
Mhm.
So that was another risk that I
Yeah.
took. So that became very, very defining in building a nonprofit. And then moving from there, 10 years later, being asked to come and turn around another nonprofit that was struggling and building that into a premier
Hmm.
provider in Virginia. So I did that in my 30s. My 40s were, I guess, kind of boring. Um, and then in my 50s, leaving that full-time employment and starting my own company, just working with people, elevating people in companies, co-CEOing with folks, and doing meeting facilitation. So, and that's only a little over a year old that I've been doing that. So I guess that's kind of,
Kind of where you are. Yeah.
yeah.
And tell us the name of your business,
Navigate Advisors.
Navigate Advisors.
Mhm.
And what is your product or service?
Several. So I can do interim executive leadership. I have been a co-CEO with others. I can come into a company and handle some other things alongside when there's transition. I've assisted companies exploring a merger.
Mm.
I have worked with coach and elevated um, employees and given business owners feedback,
Okay.
all in a very respectful manner, right? And then I do meeting facilitation.
Okay.
So, and retreats.
Okay, cool.
Those are
Awesome.
like the main products of what we do. I can do lots of things, but yeah.
And remind me later, I have a couple of lovely connections for you in Richmond that I would love to make for you. Um,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, just a couple of other amazing businesswomen that I know in that community. So, okay, so if everybody's gotten this part of the process outlined for the most part, then let's dive into the next step. So this is a little worksheet that we'll provide to the people who weren't able to do this today. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick of all these experiences that you have in each of the decades. We're just going to make an example of one of these right now. Eventually, you can go back and do this process for each of these major kind of landmark experiences that you've had in the chronology of story. But I want you to think about the micro transformation that your client is looking for that is expressed in your own particular transformation. So let's use Debbie as an example. One of her big moments of transformation was honestly choosing to put herself first in a lot of different ways. There was a decade where she said, you know what? I'm going to put myself first. I'm going to move to a new community that serves my life and my family better. I'm going to invest and spend more money on myself and my business and my personal development than I've ever done before. And I'm going to start a side gig doing what I think is my life's purpose. Right. So that was a huge piece of choosing to invest in herself and choosing to put herself first. Now, how does that relate to the transformation that your clients are looking for? Right. So think about your ideal client and think about what's going on in their world. And what's going on in their world is that perhaps they know the thing that they should be, or I don't want to shit on them. They know the thing that would serve them best to do right now, and they're choosing not to do it. Right? They know the step to make, but they're not making the step. Right? You knew the step to make was to move, eventually divorce your husband. You knew all of those steps, and at one point you made the choice to make them.
And
So
to
that
me, Meredith, and let me ask if this is kind of along that same line, is kind of I put down like I wanted something different, right? Like I didn't want to keep living the life I was living in Kansas City where it was like I was working for the weekend. And courage. Like it took courage. I wanted the courage to make the difference.
And in that moment, when you were still in Kansas City, so here's my analogy. Your ideal client is Kansas City you.
Yeah.
Their
And then my
aspiration,
best friend said, shit or get off the pot.
yeah, their aspiration, Debbie lives in Sandpoint. So their aspiration is Sandpoint, Idaho, Debbie, right? So when you were Kansas City, Debbie, what were you craving? What were you at a gut level craving that you weren't going to get there? And that sharing that outwardly, understanding of that craving and showing, hey, you're at point A, ideal client, and you want to get to point B, showing that pathway through your own experience is the goal. So for each of you, look at one of the decades, and we can walk through, again, we have time today, which I actually love. We can walk through an example. So pick a decade where you're like, okay, of all the transformations that I made, this is the one that is probably the most relevant to the one thing that my ideal client really desires. So for you, Jennifer, um, I think your young experience taught you that perhaps that you really wanted to pour into other people, that you wanted to recognize where they were and help them elevate to maybe their full potential in a sense. Um, so which of the decades aha moment did you have when you were like, you know what, this is indicative of the craving that my client has? Are you following me on that?
I think I am, but I think my point that I would use is I think what my clients crave has a theme throughout all my decades, as probably with the other participants on this call. That's
And
what I was thinking as you were talking.
yeah, and what is it? Tell me. So what is it? Let's go
A
dive
lot,
into.
a lot of my practice and work history has all focused around being your authentic self, which means vulnerability. And vulnerability is the currency of relationships. So being able to work with people on being vulnerable and being okay with being vulnerable and seeing it as a strength.
Mhm.
So I think that that shows up, and even in the risk taking, there's vulnerability with that. So I like I said that when you were talking, I'm like, but that shows up throughout.
And that's awesome. That's awesome. So I think it's fantastic that that shows up throughout, right? Because you can tie experiences throughout all these decades to that same concept, but it's almost like, Hansel and Gretel, how they try to leave the trail of breadcrumbs back to find where, to get home or whatnot. That's what you're doing is like you're leaving this trail of breadcrumbs for your ideal client to recognize and pick up. So if your overarching theme is that a paramount to being a great leader is your ability to be vulnerable, right? Your ability to say, wow, I don't know everything. Maybe I need to have smarter people in the room around me. Or, wow, I made a mistake. How do we make that better? Or, wow, I'm going to take this risk for myself or the company, even though I don't have all of the answers. So to stand like confidently in vulnerability, if that's the overarching theme, then you're going to attract people who believe in that. You're not going to attract people who are like, you know, just very measured and very pedantic in their approach, my way or the highway, do what I say, not what I do type leaders, right? You're going to attract the people that are wanting to build more cohesive team, wanting to show up fully as themselves and not lose their sense of authority or leadership in the experience. So if we were to look at some of the elements of your story where you were vulnerable, like you said, I picked myself up and moved to an entirely new community. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything. And I completely built an amazing life for myself around that. Right. you did what your ideal client is wanting to do. You stood with your courage, but you also accepted the vulnerability. Is that resonating for you?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so, Tamara, let's dive into which of your experiences do you think ties most, perhaps to the client that you're wanting more of right now? Are you wanting more of the once a week, 45-minute introductory to, contemporary client, or are you wanting more of the competition dancer who has their sights on a professional career?
Well, it's an interesting question because one definitely pays bills as a financial stream to it, and the other is my passion. So, what I'm attracting is more of the pre-professional exploring what their passions and gifts are in all of the arts. And that I'm attracting, especially in private coaching and mentoring. And that's what I truly am. I've had to look at having someone else come in that enjoys we call it recreational dance more, that is their passion because I'm not attracting it. I definitely, for my business to be well-rounded, and especially in the area, the community that we are in, the recreational part is very popular in the different communities within the city. And there's a lot of competition in that, where there's many studios that offer that. Um, I've come in with my own experience, not knowing exactly where it was all going to lead, but with my passion and how I'm directing it, it is somewhat set apart. So I've had to bring in teachers from other areas to technically train the dancers to get them ready for pre-professional and outside of the area. So I think the decade is really, for me, about the one that wants to go into it as a professional, and I look at what path, whether it's college, whether it's company, whether it's going right out there and doing it, and preparing the families and seeing the resiliency if the student has that, and guiding them with those steps because I've been there, and also as a mother has been there. So there's a lot of knowledge with that, and I do it very passionately, of trying to find the gifts that they have to explore, even if it takes them on a different journey. I feel like I can lead them there, but it is their choice once they're, you know, get out of the nest, so to speak. It's believing that they can do it. The biggest struggle for families will be, right now in this generation, I feel it's resiliency. I find there's a real cocoon around some of our children as safety net, so they don't necessarily explore all of what they have inside of them for fear. One, maybe the arts won't pay enough. Very valid. Can I do it? Will I become it? All of that. So I don't know if I'm making any sense at all. I'm kind of rambling.
No, no, not at all. And that's I think everybody has a superpower. Like I think we're all born with some or a set of superpowers. Uh,
Hmm.
and the superpower I'm offering you guys today is tell me a bit more so we can find that through line, so that we can find that thread that you can
Hmm.
continue to go back again and again with all of these smaller breadcrumbed pieces that create the whole overarching story. So
Hmm.
for you, I think um, your overarching piece is if you want to work with someone who not only has walked the path as the student dancer, right,
Hmm.
but who
Yeah.
has walked the path of the parent
Hmm.
and the professional, I'm the one,
Yeah.
right? I'm the one. Like I don't
Hmm.
know if there's anybody else, or the field becomes much smaller
It
anyway.
does. It
Um,
does.
if
Hmm.
that's what you're hanging your hat on here
Yeah.
in our community. And so saying, here are the and for you, I'm addressing multiple decades or multiple experiences, but it's, hey, I left at 14,
Hmm.
I became a professional, then I became a dance mom, and now I own a studio and help other people do what I was able to help my kids do and what I did for myself.
Hmm.
It's kind of the not sexy version, like the not glorified version with all of the great language around
Hmm.
it. That's
Yeah.
the through line. So
Mhm.
if your ideal client is looking for someone who can lead the parent and the child in their relationship together
Mhm,
toward the potential of a career in the arts that's the best fit for them,
Mhm.
There's nobody better in Spokane to do it, right?
Okay.
And that's kind of the through line. So as you develop that, we're going to say, what is this big transformation that they're craving? Well, the big transformation this kiddo is craving is I want to be a professional dancer, right?
Mhm.
Or I think I do. At least I want to explore it. Like I'm really drawn to that. I'm really excited about that. Um,
Mhm.
what does that shift feel like in real life? Like, what is it going to take? This is where
Mhm.
the breadcrumbs come in, right? For Debbie, if the person is like, Kansas City Debbie, who's like, oh my gosh, I'm craving a, a lifestyle of more freedom, of less stress, of not living by the clock, right? What are these micro benefits that they want? Well, Debbie, what were some of the first things that you found yourself unwinding when you stepped away from the corporate world and stepped into your new life? Didn't you have those moments where you were like, maybe you were like, oh my God, I'm at Trader Joe's at like 11:30 in the morning. Instead of being in that really dysfunctional management meeting with those upper executives that aren't even listening to us anyway.
I was skiing down the mountain instead of being in a meeting.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was skiing down the mountain instead of being in the meeting, right? I was volunteering for me, I was volunteering to teach art at my kids' school instead of sitting in a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, right? So once you know your big transformation and these micro benefits, it's those micro benefits that trigger the aha moment of that's what I want, right? Of that's what I want. Because sometimes our ideal client can't even articulate for us what it is they want. Have you guys ever run into that? They can't even quite tell you yet. So if you can show them little pieces of the story, like one of the first things I, experienced when I left and I made this big investment in myself is that I had the time freedom to ski down the mountain whenever I want. And I looked out at Lake Pend Oreille and I thought to myself, wait a minute, this is my life now? Like I've actually done this and I shouldn't just keep this for myself. Now that I know how to do this and lead somebody there, I shouldn't be the only one that gets to live this way. So now I'm motivated to help you live this way too. So what's the mountain you're trying to ski down? Right? Would be a way to position that. And that there, I gave an example of your lived experience, your story hook showing what's possible. So Tamara's going to say, okay, I've got these kids that think that they want to step into a professional career. They're very motivated, they're very excited, they have a raw talent. Parents are a little bit unsure. Maybe you talk about the moment for yourself, a little story hook could be the moment for your teenage self when it clicked
Mhm.
for you that this was what you were going to do. Right? Remember the moment where you were like 14-year-old, I'm literally gonna move away from my family to pursue this. And what did that feel like? But how did it also leave you to take those next steps to ultimately be a professional?
Okay.
Those are the little micro moments that they want to hear. And what we're really doing here is an exercise in personal branding. You're putting yourself forward, right? Like, I know Tamara's business is called Artistry in Motion. Debbie's business is The Lit Up Life. Jennifer's business is Navigate Advisors. It's not the Jennifer Boyden business or the Debbie Heiser business, but at the end of the day, it is your personal brand and it is your personal story that's going to be the elements that pull people through. So the exercise here is to do this for each of the big moments across your decades. So for Tamara, we said there's 4 big moments. So she's going to do this exercise 4 times. What was the big transformation that she had that her clients want? She left home at 14 to pursue a professional career. What was the second one that she did? She became a professional. She got her first professional gig. She got paid to do the thing she was wanting her whole life. What's the third thing that she got to do? Well, she decided to leave that professional career, become a mom, and turns out she's raising dancers. So now she's on the flip side of the coin. So what was the big transformation that happened there for her? And then what was the big transformation where it all came together to serve other people, right? So those are the 4 big transformations. And then in each of those, what are the micro benefits that your client is looking for that you already lived? What are the little aha moments? And there can be multiple micro benefits. And then you tie that benefit that they're after to a little baby piece of your story. Okay, you tie that to a little baby piece of your story. So I'll use myself as an example. I got into the corporate world. I literally started a job for $10 an hour and 13 years later left as the executive VP of marketing in a company, right? I feel like I earned 3 master's degrees while I worked there. I don't have a real one because I earned them on the job. So in that experience, I learned the elements of storytelling and I learned how that happened. And then I walked away from my job with no idea what I was going to do. I fired my cleaning lady, the gardener, shut off the cable, all the things. And then I said, I need to make $1,000 a month in order to not dip into my savings. And I thought to myself, what's the fastest way that I could make $1,000 a month? And that's when I started my first business after I left my corporate job. And that resonates with a lot of the people that I serve because they're wanting to make that leap, because they're wanting to make that jump from, hey, this is a part-time hobby type business or a business that I want to pivot or scale, but they're not breaking it down in those terms. And so that little micro benefit that they're looking for is literally the opportunity to say, okay, what can I do to earn that next $1,000? What can I do to add to that bottom line? Okay, wow, the story hook that I can use is talking to them about how my goal was to make that first $1,000 a month and how that's where the whole trajectory of my next, 13 years in business started with that one decision to try to make $1,000 a month doing something that served my soul and told my story rather than something that, like basically sucked my soul. So thoughts around tying these big transformations to the micro benefits and story hooks. I want you all to leave today with at least one of those through lines.
Meredith, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, you bet.
Um, can you do the same exercise with multiple types of clients? So for me, it is everything that you had explained there, but I also have other clients within that subset. For instance, the professional dancer transitioning to be a mother, but still continues dancing professionally, that I have. The other is a choreographer. So I have all these subsets within the arts. So doing this exercise, does it get too complicated? Or do I need to go and say, there's this client, there's this client? Because my life diversified in many, many areas of experience.
Yeah,
All those different aspects are there. How do you go from being a dancer into teaching and then owning a studio? There's a certain type of client there. And then I also relate to Debbie in that I'm also looking to put me first and trying to figure out the next phase in my stage of life of doing more for me and having the business still run, but also doing it a little differently with more people around it to do that. So I guess my main question is, can you have different clients and do the same exercise with them?
absolutely. And so here's how I would set this up. This is where I'm going to bridge the gap from like the very right and the left brain of this whole thing.
Okay.
Um, I want you to make like a matrix on your piece of paper. And I'm not super awesome on Zoom. And I know that there's a whiteboard and I could probably use it and figure out how to draw, but it would take me 10 minutes and you probably wouldn't be able to read it anyway. So we're not going to go there. So on this matrix, down the left-hand side, you're going to write your audience groups. So, and let's just do them chronological by age. Your
Okay.
first group is going to be your like young recreational dancer.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you have like the mini recreational dancers, and then you have the ones that are a bit older, but still.
Mm-hmm.
And then you
Yeah.
have your competition dancers.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have it sounds like you do quite a bit of mentorship
I
to
do.
people that are
Mm-hmm.
a variety of um uh,
All gym, yeah, ice skating, gym, all of it. Yeah, I do.
but so across their discipline as well as across kind of the time frame of the discipline, right? So maybe you've got
Okay.
somebody that's trying to become a professional. Maybe you've got
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's already is a professional but wants to go from a third tier company to a first tier company. Maybe you've got somebody like you're saying that's trying to wind down of like, oh wow, I'm a mom now. I I, I don't
Mm-hmm.
have much time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So you write all of those down the left-hand side.
Okay.
Okay. And then across the top, you're going to write your decades. Not every single one of those people down the left-hand side is going to resonate the most with every single one of your big transformations,
Okay.
right? Like your recreational dancer
Yeah.
um, is going to, look more for Is this fun? Is this safe? Is this affordable? Is my kid going to
Mhm.
be supportive in a positive environment? Right?
Right.
Maybe you figure out there, like, was there an aha moment where you realized, based on all of these dance studios and all these companies that you had exposure to, that yours was going to be different because of the culture you were going to create?
Yeah.
And that's maybe your big transformational moment, because those little ones, they're not making the buying decision. Mom
Mhm.
and dad are, right? And mom and dad
Right.
want that element. Whereas your pre-professional dancer or your other professional dancer, they're going to resonate with other elements of your story. Maybe
Mhm.
the stories of your late teens, early 20s and 30s the
Right.
most. Okay.
Right.
So if you make that matrix of the big transformations from the decades across the top and down the left, your audience brackets,
Mhm.
you can kind of say, okay, some of them would be grayed out. And then some of them would be like, okay, yeah, when I'm trying to find my next mentorship client, these are the
Mhm.
three parts of my story that matter the most. These are the micro benefits they're looking for. And then these are the hooks that I'm going to use to pull them into my story.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That helps.
And then the whole circle of that is still super valuable, for example, to the mom of the young recreational dancer, because they're looking at you and saying, wow, this person really has the most experience. I mean, I don't know if my 6-year-old wants to be a pro one day, but how
Mhm.
cool
Mhm.
to align them with someone who could take them there if they wanted to.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any other questions about that, or is that matrix idea helpful for both of you as well? Okay, cool. So you're going to figure out this big transformation, the micro benefits, and the story hook. And that's where we're going to wrap it up today. Because tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to take one of those big transformational moments. We're going to take those micro things that your client wants. We're going to tell AI a little bit about your business. We're going to plug that in to ChatGPT, and we're going to let it give us some concepts of how you can use this story in the different places you want to tell it. So be thinking about, do I want to tell this story on Facebook, for example? Do I want to tell this story in a brochure? Do I want to tell this story on my website? What is the most important place for you to be telling this story in your business right now? Is it social media? Is it, maybe you're getting ready to go do a whole bunch of conventions or talks or something like that. Wherever that is what we're going to guide ChatGPT to help us with tomorrow. And we're going to do it in a way that prompts you to get back something that sounds like you rather than something that just sounds like it came out of ChatGPT. Because we should all be using those elements to tell our story. So we're going to bridge the gap between that lived experience and your client's deepest need. Okay. And this is where your message really starts moving people. Um, and where, again, we can use AI to step into that soul aligned way of using it, where it becomes an extension of you rather than a replacement of you.